Hello and welcome back to Bestseller Summit Online. Hope you're enjoying all of the presentations, all the trainings and live panels. Today I've got a very special guest, the one and only Chandler Bolt. Chandler, how you doing?
Jesse, great to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Wouldn't be Bestseller Summit Online without you, man. And Chandler, probably most people here on the summit are familiar with you. For those that aren't, you're the creator of Self-Publishing School, author of numerous books. You've got hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000+ five-star reviews on your work, and now you've helped thousands and thousands of authors around the world. So super excited to dive into this interview and get your perspective on the state of self-publishing today and what aspiring authors and current authors can do to help sell more books and get more books into readers' hands.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for this. This is something I get fired up about, and so I'm just really excited to be here.
Sweet, man. Well, maybe you can just give a little overview of the current state of what it's like for you and your business and the books you've got, and then we can dig a little deeper, really focusing on self-publishing, since today's theme is choosing the right path for you, publishing and promotion wise.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'll try to condense this down into like maybe the sub 5-minute version, because I could go on this for a long time. But so obviously I run a company called Self-Publishing School. So as we get into talking about self-publishing versus hybrid versus traditional publishing, the perceptive audience out there can probably guess which way I'm going to go, right? But I also want to provide some different context here, just for some background. Self-Publishing School, we're an online training program. We've taught thousands of people at this point how to write and publish their first book. And so you mentioned I've got a few books. My brand new book's called Published. That just released, and I also just released a Self-Publishing School podcast. So kind of in terms of like where I'm at with my business, at this point, Published was my 6th book. I've seen this process play out for myself 6 times, and then I've seen it kind of play out for our customers, like over 1,000 times. It's thousands and thousands at this point. And so I feel like, I guess, as a business is better than ever, and I'll go as an industry. So we've been able to scale pretty quickly and really use books as a business, and use books to grow my personal business, which that's what I'm a huge advocate about. I'm sure we'll talk about that some today. But basically, my trajectory went from 0 to 1.32 million in my first 11 months in 2015. We did just over 2.2 last year in 2016. We're set to do 5 or so this year. And that's built around books. Like, books are the hub of that, and they continue to drive leads. They continue to drive sales. Now, as an industry level, I feel like we're at this unique time in history where it's easier than ever to publish a book. Now, there's some good and some bad to that, right? The good is that it breaks down the barriers that used to exist. So anyone like you and I, we don't have to wait for an agent, and we certainly don't have to wait for a publisher to not only just publish a book, which that threshold's been gone for a really long time now, or for a couple decades, right? But now, not only that, we can also have a successful, legitimate book that's self-published, which up until the last 5 years or so, that didn't exist. It was either you're self-published, and it's just kind of because you couldn't get a publisher, or you're traditionally or hybrid published, and that's the only way you're legit, right? So I feel like we're at this unique time in history where, Barnes and Nobles across the country are closing down. They're not innovating, so they're just dying a slow death. And it seems like they're not doing anything about it. And as much as I like in-person bookstores as the next person, like it's nostalgic. This is this cool thing. It's like they're not innovating, so they're getting shut down. All the mom and pop bookstores across the country are shutting down. Now, that might seem depressing, but the good news is that means that distribution, which was the single chokehold in the publishing industry, for traditional publishers, it's kind of like the one leg that they had to stand on, which I know you're a music guy, Jesse, so you'll appreciate this. Very similar to the music industry, right? Where the record labels, they controlled distribution, which was radio and in record stores, right? Like, those were the two things that they had that you couldn't get unless you went through a record label. Now even that's changing, but I think I think that the record or the music industry is a few years behind the book industry in that sense, where it's just been democratized, and there's just so many ways that you can do it now on the publishing side. And I'll complete the analogy here and just kind of round this out. And that's that all of these the traditional publishers, they were relying on distribution, like that was their trump card. And now they don't really have that, because over 70% of all books are sold. Over 70% of all books sold are sold on Amazon, right? So it's this crazy thing where, okay, now you or I have access to where over 70% of books are sold, just the same as any author who goes through a traditional publisher. So it brings the entrepreneurial aspect back into publishing, which is what I love. It's what you love. It's like entrepreneurship is king at the end of the day, and it's all about who can better market. And who can write a great book, and then who can market that book very successfully, which, I'm sure you've seen this with your work as well, Jesse, but like we have people who sign traditional publishing contracts, and then their publishers tell them to sign up with us to learn how to market the book. And
at that point, it's like, what's the point, right?
You're right. Because they're getting screwed into their publishing deal, and then they're learning from us how to do what they think they're paying their publisher to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's true. We have the traditional publishing represented here on the summit, and we got the founder, Morgan James, who is also a friend and published Lifestyle Entrepreneur originally. So we've got that perspective. But certainly there's so much exciting happening on the self-publishing side, and definitely excited to jump into that with you. Some of those stats you shared, it's kind of staggering, There's this one trend of physical bookstores closing down, and yet, people are reading and consuming book content more than ever. And from my perspective as a hybrid publisher, I see that taking place pretty equally distributed across electronic, so Kindle edition, paperback, hardcover, and then audiobooks too are exploding. And there's a certain readership and listenership for each of those categories that doesn't really spill over. Has been another observation of mine. So, for your books, you both write about the self-publishing and the authorship process, and have a whole school that teaches it. So, as you were going through your own process of writing and learning the ropes and releasing your books, what were some of the key things that really helped you get to the next level of success in terms of reviews and book sales for your own books? And then let's expand that out to include what you're teaching and how you're helping authors all over the world through self-publishing school.
Yeah, some of the best things that I learned, they're all fundamental marketing principles. Some of the best things that I learned to market my books were also the best things I learned to grow my business. I had kind of this epiphany where I had dropped out of school. I decided to drop out of school because I was tired of learning how to run a business from professors who had never ran a business. That really didn't make too much sense to me. And this is why it's a fundamental core value for myself. I've got my core values over here. But it's a fundamental core value for me is like, don't teach stuff that I haven't done. Because that drives me crazy when people teach stuff that they haven't done. And that's why I dropped out of school. But I dropped out of school. I had a little bit of runway to start my business. And then a few months in, it's like, I'm struggling hardcore. Like, this business is just failing. This was the business before self-publishing school. And I'm like, man, this is all those people that told me I shouldn't have dropped out. Maybe they were right. Maybe this is a bad decision. This is rough. I just see my savings and my bank accounts just like just one-way path to zero. And if it passes that threshold, I'm moving back in with mom and dad, and I'm going to be super embarrassed, right? So I'm trying to figure this thing out. And I had some mentors at the time who they just kept teaching me about marketing and, about copywriting, about marketing, and about sales. And especially about copywriting, which is not what probably most people when they're on a book summit are thinking copywriting, not like the copyright that's like in the beginning of your book kind of thing, but actual it's salesmanship in print. So writing words with the intent to sell, whether you're selling someone on an idea or whether you're selling someone on a product, right? And so I had all these mentors that were telling me all those things. It's like the importance. And I just had this epiphany where it was like, I'm about to be broke as a joke. / kind of already am. This business is failing. I can't get new customers. What's the one thing that I can do to change that? It's learn how to sell, learn how to market, learn copywriting, right? And if I learn that skill, I'll never be broke. If I ever need a job, I will have one. And I can basically write my own paycheck because everybody needs more leads, more customers, and more business, right? So I can either monetize that skill by going to work for someone, or I can do it for my own business. And it's when I focused on that singular skill. I was handwriting copy for an hour a day for like 3 months. I started reading all kinds of books like Influence by Robert Cialdini, 80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall, like all these fundamental time-tested marketing books that really shape the way I do what I do now. And so there's fundamental principles, right? Like one of the best books that I can recommend for people is Influence by Robert Cialdini, because basically everything that I do is it's Influence, the psychology of persuasion. And almost everything that I do and most people do to sell and market things, their books, their business, stuff like that, come out of those fundamental principles. Things like social proof, which are reviews. Things like reciprocity, scarcity, urgency, liking, so having people like you, like all these things that I build into my products. And so like I'll just zoom in and get very tactical for a second. So like let's take reviews for example. Everybody knows that reviews are really important, right? But most people don't focus enough on them. So with my very first book, I kind of created this method of like getting reviews, and there's multiple psychological principles in that, right? Well, first things first, I'll go to the execution. So I had a spreadsheet, and I tracked everyone who had supported the book, and I sent them a personal am I getting scratchy audio, by the way?
No, you're good. You're
okay.
Good.
Cool. I sent them a personal thank you and for supporting the book. Did a literal dance on the video, and then like with music playing, and then I said, hey, I'd love it if you left me a review. It's like a 30-second thing, right? There's reciprocity, right? I'm sending a video. It's already thanking them, and I'm just like, hey, no pressure, but if you could leave a review. My goal is to get 100 reviews by this Thursday, which is Thanksgiving. I happen to be in Europe away from my family this year. Can't be there for Thanksgiving. I'd really be thankful if you left a review on this book, right? Like, so I'm using some psychological things here, right? Like I'm having a review goal that people can get behind. I make it reversible with a puppy dog close, which the puppy dog close is, it's modeled off of pet stores, where pet stores would always do this thing where like, oh, you can take the puppy home, and if you don't like it, just bring it back, right?
The try before you buy.
Exactly. It's like, how many people have brought a freaking puppy back to the store? Basically no one. So it's making it reversible. So I make it reversible. I say, hey, you can go edit your review at any time. If you go back, it doesn't need to be the perfect review. I'm giving them a goal to shoot behind. I'm physically reaching out to them via video, like all of these things. And I'm saying by Thursday. So I'm giving urgency behind this as well, right? So like all of those psychological principles just in asking for a review. They also talk about like having one call to action. So when I'm launching the book, I'm launching it to get reviews, right? I'm not saying buy the book, review the book, share it with a friend, share it on Facebook, yada, yada. It's like I'm asking for one thing. And so it was all those things. Like that's a very tactical thing that I did early on. But those fundamental marketing principles, like social proof. Now my books have a ton of reviews.
What's the result? I mean, you have like hundreds and hundreds of reviews on each of your books.
I mean, Publish just launched in December. It is, late May when we're recording this interview. And that book has, I want to say, just about 400 reviews. Book Launch has, 800 reviews or so. That makes a really big difference. But I'm going to kind of land the plane here because I've been talking for a while. But these fundamental marketing principles, like I think there's not a more important skill that you can learn than marketing. And it really pisses me off when people are like, oh, but I don't like marketing, or I'm afraid to sell and stuff like that. And they think like when they look at someone like you or me, it's like, oh, Chandler, you must have just always been good at it. And you're just one of those marketing guys and I'm not. Right. And I had this experience where like when I was in Student Painters, like this internship, they teach you how to run a painting company in college. Like I was the worst salesman in my branch. And I did more estimates than anyone else, but I wouldn't close because I wanted people to like me. And I would end it, and then they'd be like, "Well, maybe. And I'll be like, okay, cool. Talk to you later. See ya. And I'm like walking out the door, right? They haven't even had a chance to say yes or no because I just want them to like me. And so this wasn't something that came easy, but it's a craft that's worth pursuing because once you do it, it makes everything else easier.
Yeah,
like,
maybe. Oh, I was just saying maybe we can do some myth busting here because a lot of what I hear, both in this summit and generally talking to authors, is that they just want to focus on writing. They don't want to focus on marketing and sales.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear that, I have to speak up. I have to say something to them because you got to bridge that gap. And marketing doesn't have to mean that people don't like you, right? I mean, there's a lot of ways to do marketing, including what you guys are seeing on this summit, where it's both marketing and informative and value added and makes money and people like you. So
yeah,
it doesn't have to be one or the other. And certainly it sounds like you had that experience with your student painting job of not wanting to sell because you wanted people to like you. But how did you bridge that gap to both marketing very effectively and lots of people like you? You're a likable guy.
That's a great question. I just want to riff on that and now answer that question, which is like, you don't have to sell your soul, and you don't have to be a total tool like to be good at marketing, right? Like you don't have to be a bad person or just like a shady, salesy, whatever kind of person to be good at it. Like just be authentic. That's been one of my biggest, the biggest things I do is like, I'm just kind of like, I'm goofy. What you see is what you get. It's kind of like, I'm not trying to hide anything here, but like when it comes time to ask for the sale, I'm going to ask for the sale. Like when it's like, hey, are you going to enroll in self-publishing school? Like I'm going to just straight up ask. And then I'm going to remind you and I'm going to say, hey, it's closing tonight. Like, are you going to do this or what? Like, and I'm going to be very frank about it. But then it's like, because I think it's just a normal conversation. Like we're just having a conversation. And I would rather you just say yes or no. And I'm not going to pressure you into anything than just like hint at it, passively aggressively suggest, get frustrated when you don't respond or like, all those things. But you ask what was the turning point and how did I bridge that gap? I remember this actually. It's when I was going through John Carlton's Simple Writing System, which was when it's about copywriting. It's when I was doing that handwriting copy every day. And he said somewhere in there, because this was such a hang up for me, is like, I can't be pushy. I can't sell or ask for the sale. And I even still struggle with this. It's like I think it's an internal thing that never goes away, right? But he said in there, you have to so believe in your product that you, with every fiber in your being, believe that your product or your prospect, their life is better with that product than without it. And then with that belief in place, you have to know that and believe inside that, like, if I don't sell them, I'm doing them a disservice. So, like, if I don't convince them to buy this product a year from now, 6 months from now, 5 years from now, like, their life is going to be worse. So it's my obligation and my duty as a service to the world, like to make the world a better place, that I sell them on this product because I know that this is going to make their life better. Now, obviously, the key assumption here and the important piece is that the product actually makes their life better, right? Which for me, I can't sell something that I don't believe in. If I'm selling some shady thing that's ripping people off, like my business would probably be doing zero revenue because I can't passionately talk about that, and I can't sleep at night or even just like function as a human being if I'm like screwing people over, right? So the product has to be really good, and then it's your obligation, it's your duty, right? So I think about that when we're about to do these big affiliate launches, and I'm like, man, this guy's my friend. Like, I don't want to hit him up to like promote my launch. Like, I hate when people do that to me. And I'm like waffling back and forth, but then I know it's like, no, there's somebody out there that like this person's talking to that it could totally change their life. Just like I've seen it change so many other people's lives. So it's like, I got to do this. And if they say no, they say no. Like it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely sleep better at night knowing that you asked instead of being like, oh, I don't want to bother him or I don't want to make the request. You know, something else that you touched on there, Chandler, is very important in my opinion, which is believing in what it is you're selling. In this case, whether it's your book or a training program or a coaching opportunity, whatever it is, to genuinely believe. And for everybody watching this, please hear it, that you will be making their life better as a result. And if you believe that, then it takes away pretty much all the stigma of selling, quote unquote, as if that's a bad thing. But the corollary, I think, is that, you know, it's got to be good. And if it isn't, you hear about it. I mean, with
Yeah.
reviews, you can't take down somebody else's review once they leave it. There's a lot of transparency in online business and in business in general these days that lets people know if something's good, bad, or indifferent. So
Yeah.
anything else you want to say on that point in terms of quality and really creating a book and a product and offering that is both high quality and that you believe in so much that you feel almost obligated to share it with more and more people?
Yeah, a couple of things, just kind of riffing off of what you were saying is like, if you truly believe in it, and I know the first objection that people are going to have is like, hey, this is unproven, so I don't know if I can believe in this. That was my hang up with self-publishing school originally. Is I said, I've done like 3 books successfully, but I haven't proven that I can replicate this with more than one other person. I'd helped a buddy, and he had a bunch of success with it. But then beyond that, I hadn't proven it. So like even in the beginning, I was like kind of like, but I just knew I knew for myself, like I'm a very high integrity guy. Like this is my number one core value. Honesty and integrity always win. That's my number one company value. Like that's up there for me. So I knew that if it bombed, like I would make it right to these people, and it would be fine, right? Like they may be unhappy for a period of time if I just totally sucked at teaching this thing, but I would do whatever I could in my power, even if I'm on my last dollar and the complete college dropout failure. Like I'm gonna make it up to these people, right? Like I'm gonna do whatever I got to do, and then after getting over that fear and just having that talk to myself, like, all right, I'm gonna do this. We went through the process. We had 44 people sign up for that first class, and within 6 months, we had over a 60% success rate, meaning that over 60% of people had written and published their book. Which to me, I'm like, is this good? And I start asking around, and people are like, oh, you're lucky if you get 10% to even open your course. And I'm like, wait, what? That's crazy, right? So this is 60%. And then it was like, oh, okay, this is validated. Now I'm going to dedicate myself to make this product even better. But then I can shout from the rooftops about this because I've just seen this success. And then we've just been iterating on that product ever since. So my piece of advice there is like, yes, you may have to like have that conversation with yourself. Like this is unproven. How do I like come to terms with this? That's how I did it, and then how I would recommend it as well. And I'll tell one more quick story because I think this is impactful for people like jumping over the ledge of like getting into selling. I was talking about sending that extra email to like an affiliate or something like that. I had this experience where the very first business I ever ran was a landscaping company, and I worked at a fitness and racket center. I was a tennis court maintenance guy when I was in high school. And so I had my side business and I had my business cards, right? I went to Vistaprint, got me my 500 business cards from Vistaprint. And all of these people were like my ideal clients. It's like a retirement community. I'm running a landscaping company, like doing mulch. These people don't want to do their own mulch, right? So it's like, great. It's a gold mine. And I remember that I'd have 5 business cards in my pocket, and I'd be walking around the tennis courts. And if I struck up a conversation, I'd give someone a business card. I could go do their landscaping and stuff. And I was just petrified. Like these people are like my good friends. Like I've befriended everyone, and like I love old people. And so it's like we just really hit it off, right? But for some reason, when it came time to even just say, hey, oh, by the way, I started this business. Here's my business card. Like I couldn't even do that. And I just remember this one instance where I was petrified. But I went into my mom's office and one of her coworkers was there. And I just like finally worked up the courage to give her a business card. And then she goes to the gym the next day. Someone talks about needing landscaping. And she recommends me. I go over there. That turns into like $1,000 job, which in high school is like, pff, my mind's blown, right? Then her next door neighbor needs some work. That turns in like to $2,000. Then their next door neighbor sees me working over there, and that turns into like another $1,000 or $2,000. And it's like that was like a $4,000 business card. And I just remember thinking about that, like, because I would just psych myself up and to give someone this business card, and then I would chicken out, and then I'd go back and go, Chandler, like, you're an idiot. Like, why can't you do this? Like, that was your one shot of the afternoon to like hand someone your business card. And after that day, I was like, I'm handing you, but this could be another $4,000 business card. Like, I'm giving you this business card. So just this story to say, like, get out. Like, that's what I always go back to is like, hey, you never know when you send that email or when you ask for that one thing in a clear way, like what that can lead to.
I love that. And it reminds me of a sort of a related point, which especially in regards to a book, is that you can never predict the impact you're going to have on the person that reads it. You can't predict where they're at in their life when they come across your book and read it. And you also can't control who they share it with and who they give it to. And there's something about that, just like you shared giving that business card to one person who in turn gave it to another, and you got work, and then they see you working, where it starts to spiral really quickly.
Yeah.
You can't pre-plan that stuff, right?
No, you can't.
So what's the carryover in terms of a book, both for your own and for people that have gone through self-publishing school, that once they do cross that gap and write their book and get it out there and do it in the right way, where they start to see these unexpected benefits, or things start to spiral forward for them?
Yeah, it was so funny you mentioned that, because I've got like the cheesiest analogy, which I've never, like, I don't know, I've just never thought of anything more clever, I guess. But I always say, like, a book is the key that opens the door to Narnia, right? Like, it's this world that you didn't even know existed until you have the key and until you open the door. And then you open the door and you're like, what? This is crazy. Like, what's going on in here? I didn't even know this world existed. Now, yes, that's a little bit of a cheesy analogy, but that's the most true thing that I can come up with for me.
I grew up watching Chronicles of Narnia. I know what it
is. Stumbling over to find the cabinet, opening up the door, right? But that was the experience for me. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know, which was all of the opportunities that become available to you when you become an author, right? I started getting on podcasts. I started getting featured in the Huffington Post, Business Insider, summits like this. So, like, my first book built over a 4,000 person email list in like the first 6 months just from the book. Now I have an email list and I have nothing to sell them, which is a good problem to have. Most people, it's the other way around. They have something to sell, but they don't have an email list, right? And like all of these things, I sparked a business. It sparked an online course, which I didn't really know that was a thing, right? Like, all of these things, you just kind of trip and fall into all these opportunities. And whether it's PR, whether it's passive income, whether it's recognition, podcast interviews, for a lot of people, it's a glorified business card that brings them business. Like, there's just all of these things that you kind of don't know until you experience it.
Yeah, that too. And another recurring theme across the summit is, especially what I find with authors that haven't yet released their book, is the outpouring of support and the opportunities that come to you as a result of writing your book and putting it out. As long as you have a way for somebody to connect with you, and that's made explicit within the book. But as just a quick example, my book, Lifestyle Entrepreneur, came out 3-4 years ago, and just the other week, I got an email, multiple paragraphs from a couple in Brazil, said, we read the book, we quit our job, we want to translate it to Portuguese and share this with people in Brazil because they need it. And I was like, geez, this thing is still working for me years later with people I've never met in places I've never been. And I think it's important for everybody watching this to hear just little snippets like that of, again, things you can't predict on the front end when you're working on your book and when you're planning to launch and when you're going through that. Once it's out there, it takes on a life of its own. And I'm sure that's been your experience too. Would love for you to share, maybe a few more snippets of some of the things that become available to authors once they cross that gap and release their book.
Well, Jesse, it's funny you mentioned that, because you said my book's still working for me. I like to call a book a silent salesman, right? It doesn't say a word, but it does a lot of selling. And when people pick up this book, they're with me for hours and hours, and it's selling them, right? Now, I don't want people to misunderstand this. This is not a sales pitch. Like, they're being sold via my best content that I have, right? So by the end of this, they're like, man, hopefully they're like, man, I kind of like this Chandler guy. self-publishing school seems pretty cool. I'm going to check it out. They sign up for a webinar or something like that, and then they go on to join the program, which that happens all the time, right? And this is like those sales just happen. Like I don't have to do anything for those sales to happen. And so for a lot of people, if you're a business owner, like those leads and those sales can just come in the door, and they continue to come in, and they're qualified leads. Like they're leads that you're going to sell for sure. They're not like you sent out a flyer and someone's calling in on the flyer, right? These are people who have already spent hours with you before you've even said one word to them. And just to fully answer your question, I was talking with Brian Tracy. I did an interview with him a little while back ago, and when he said one thing, he said, this always stuck out with me. He said, you can separate your life into two times. It's like BB and AB, right? It's like AD and BC, that sort of thing. And he said BB and AB. It's before book and after book. And I was like, man, that's so true. Like my life looks so different before I had the book. So there was my BB life and then my AB life, which is the after book life. And it's totally different. Like the opportunities that come my way on a daily basis, the money I'm making is very different. Like the success I've had, the recognition, authority, like all those things, like it's night and day difference.
That's a great point. And, it's similar experience in the sense that like once you write a book, assuming it's nonfiction or you're helping somebody accomplish a goal or overcome an obstacle they're experiencing in their life, it's a different way that you're perceived than when before you've released that book and you're accumulating that experience. I was an entrepreneur for 10 years before I wrote Lifestyle Entrepreneur, but it's very different taking the position of being an author and teaching people how to do something like this than starting and running a location independent business. So you become a different person in a sense when you take that time to put your knowledge into a book. And to your point, Chandler, with your book published, what a great segue into self-publishing school. And when you say, when somebody's reading the book, what we've heard across the summit is the book is such an intimate thing, right? What other product, what other thing do people take to their bed, bring in their car, listen in their headphones at the gym? You're literally building a relationship with that author through the reading, through the listening experience of it that really makes you feel like that person, even if you've never spoken to them. So then when that transitions into, say in your case, somebody taking a course or joining self-publishing school, do you get the sense that people already are familiar with your philosophy, your approach, your perspective from reading the book and have that level of a warm relationship that may not exist in other spheres and other businesses?
Yeah, that's completely the case. People there, it's already a warm lead, right? They already have experience with me. They already have experience with what I teach, and they already kind of know whether it's something that they're interested in or not, right? Maybe it doesn't resonate with them, and by chapter 2 they put the book down, right? Maybe it does though, and then like I just talked with a guy yesterday who he was like. He's like, I listened to your podcast. I checked out your webinar. Like, it feels like I already know you, and like we're having a conversation. But like, I've obviously never talked to him, right? and it's just that effect where oftentimes you're behind the screen, right? And I don't get to talk to guys like him very often because I have a team and we have like all of those things. But you forget like how impactful that is for people. Where it's like they know you, they like you, and they trust you. And it's all from this little thing right here, right? Like this couple 100-page book, it builds that know, like, and trust factor, which makes it much easier if you're looking to further a relationship in terms of doing business together.
No doubt. And you said that you haven't spoken to them, but in a sense, through your book, through your presentation, you are speaking to them.
Exactly.
And I think people on the other end of that have that experience of truly getting to know you, getting to know any author that puts their book out there and somebody that takes the time to read it. It's a powerful thing. So, what advice would you give to authors that haven't yet gotten that first book out and are considering which path to go? Spoiler alert, I know that you're a proponent of self-publishing, but what do you say to somebody, and what are the best steps that they can take to actualize their dream of releasing a book?
Great question. I'll attack this in two ways. Number one is choosing the path. And then number two is like, what's your first step that you could take to move that way, right? In terms of choosing the path, there's no one size fits all answer. I'd say that traditional publishers are not the right path for 99.9% of people. The only reason in my mind that a traditional publishing deal makes sense is if you already have a massive audience, you don't want to make money off the book, and it's a huge authority play, right? So if you're someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, or if you're someone like Tony Robbins or something like that, and you're like, I'm going for international name recognition. I want my book to be sold internationally as well as in the front of every bookstore, and that's worth something to me more than making money off of this book or anything like that. Then and only then does the traditional publishing path make sense for you. Again, that's like 0.01% of the population. I'll tell you why, though. I'll break down some of the reasons. When you go the traditional publishing route, it's going to take you years to publish, right? Like 2 years is pretty average. They're going to keep the lion's share of the royalties, so you get pennies on the dollar for every book that you sell. They strip you of your creative liberties and control in a lot of aspects of the project. So if they don't like the cover, if they don't like the title, if they don't like the topic, they can have you change it. All of those things. They also will do zero marketing, which is the biggest misconception. Publishers, the running joke is that you show up to a publisher and they nowadays they just basically come out and say like, hey, cool, how are you going to sell this book? Like, do you have a built-in audience? Do you have, which used to be, it was the other way around, or like there was a facade that it was the other way around. So those are 4 big reasons, and there's a laundry list of other reasons why it's just going to take way longer. You're going to be frustrated. You're not going to make much money off of this in the process. A lot of times you can't do things like I do, which is lead capture in the book. One of my favorite things to do is on the first couple of pages, I give away a free audiobook.
Hold that up. Let's get a good look at that.
Yeah, this drives... this is probably a janky picture, but this drives hundreds and hundreds and thousands and actually tens of thousands of leads at this point, ongoing basis from all my books. So like I still get tons of leads from all the books that I've done every single week. And then so like in this, I love giving away the audiobook for free because it starts the relationship on the right foot. It has inherent value. It's something that people would pay $10 to $20 for on Audible. That they can get for free. And so they think, man, I like this Chandler guy already. He's doing me a favor. It's not some crappy PDF or checklist or something like that they don't want. And then also...
is that you narrating the audiobook that they get?
For this one, yes. Which
right. So now they're reading and they're hearing you, and what better way to get to know you than those 2 aspects?
100% agree. It's very intimate, right? Now, I'm also giving away video training here. This works well. And I've seen this convert really well as well. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up and I'm off on this tangent is because oftentimes you cannot do this when you go with a traditional publisher. Like they won't let you lead collect in the book unless you negotiate that in the contract, right? So another of like the laundry list of ways why it doesn't make sense to go the traditional publishing route. So in terms of choosing a path, I'm obviously way biased towards self-publishing or hybrid publishing. Right? If you're bootstrapping, if you're more entrepreneurial, like figure it out yourself. Self-publishing definitely makes sense. Just whatever you do, don't go blind. Don't do it yourself. You're going to cost yourself a bunch of money. Like this feels like I'm just like teeing up myself to just be like, buy self-publishing school. But it's like I know how many people have just wasted thousands and like tens of thousands of dollars, and they'll even come to us as like, oh, cool, you've got this editor list of top editors, like. I saved $1,000 just by going with your editor and not the one I was going to go through. And that's like a small scale, like because costs can get so astronomical if you don't know what you're looking at, right? So at a very minimum, like if you're going self-published, like read this book because I talk about how to get an editor and how to like keep from getting screwed on stuff like that. So that's that. And then so it's either that or hybrid publishing, right? Like those are 2 models that I can get behind. I can't really get behind traditional publishing. That's choosing your path. You ask, what should people do right now? My biggest piece of advice for people who haven't yet written their first book is to laser focus on completing your rough draft. Now, I've got a 3-step writing process that I teach. We've got a post on the Self-Publishing School blog. It's there's one on how to write a book and then one on how to self-publish a book in 2017.
Yeah, we can link that up under this video.
Okay, yeah. let's link that up, because that'll get like into the weeds tactically on how you can do it. But whatever you do, like follow that process. I think it'll make it easier for you. And then like just focus on the rough draft. And give yourself a deadline for when you're going to complete your rough draft. Find an accountability partner to hold you accountable to that deadline, and then publicly proclaim that you're writing a book and when the draft's going to be done, so that other people can hold you accountable, and so that you can be publicly humiliated. Right? That's what I do with all of my goals. You've probably seen this, Jesse. Like I post my goals on Facebook every single month. These are my May goals right here. That I'm going.
I do see that, and then you post at the end of the month how many of them
whether I hit it or not. Yeah, and it doesn't get any more public than that. And so find someone or a group of people to hold you accountable and have public accountability. But I'm going to circle back to this. Do not focus on anything else but getting your rough draft done. So when I say laser focus on getting the rough draft done, I mean don't come up with a title, don't come up with a marketing plan. Don't come up with like an email list. Don't start building a website. Like all of these things that can distract you from that. They say that when a writer's on a deadline, because that's when they start popping up on social media the most, right? And it's so true, because writing is inherently uncomfortable for almost everyone. And so you're going to be tempted to like get an out, like, oh, I just need to research for like 3 more months about this topic, or I need to build a site, or I need to come up with a title, like to basically do anything but write. But you got to focus on writing. You got to get that rough draft done, because I've seen this with thousands of students. When they pass that threshold of getting their rough draft finished, all of a sudden this book is attainable. Like they've seen the light at the end of the tunnel, and that momentum will carry them to the finish line. But until then, anytime until then, it's iffy, right? Like it's iffy, but then once they get past that spot, they're just exponentially more likely to be successful.
I think that's great advice, and for sure, I bet everybody watching this can relate that when you sit down to write, or when you have time scheduled to write, something pops up. There's like almost anything else sounds more appealing, right? Oh man, I need to do my laundry, or I'm gonna go drive around the block and see if there's any yard sales going on. Yeah, whatever it is, but there's something powerful about going through the process and dedicating the time to actually do it. I love your advice of not thinking about the title or anything. I actually named my book The Very Last Thing, and the introduction was the last part of it that I wrote. I always advise people just jump into the middle and then work your way out to both ends. Start writing the core content. Start writing the things you really are knowledgeable about, that you really want to convey. Don't start with page 1. I was born in 19, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But you can wind up there. So that's really solid advice. And it's true. You build momentum through the process of writing. Once you have that draft, you're right. You can see a pretty clear path to getting it out. So, look, I really appreciate you coming on, and I know that you're super busy, and I'm gonna keep this a little bit short and sweet today, but love for you to share, any sort of final words of wisdom, inspiration for authors out there. I know you've got a great 30,000-foot view of what's going on in the self-publishing space with authors. You're in touch with authors all the time. What's your message for people? Here we are in 2017 that are writing their book and committed to getting it out this year or very soon in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, if you're committed to doing it very soon, my message is immediately after this interview stops, get out a piece of paper, create a mind map, right? Like I mentioned those articles a second ago. We'll link up to that, because I've got this 3-step process. So like it starts with mind mapping, and if you're going to do this, do it, and don't keep talking about how you're going to do it. Start actually doing it. Right? It's the biggest mistake that I see people make is you'll watch like a million interviews like this and then not actually do anything. Right? So the thing that you could best do right now is, like, as soon as this interview is done, pull out a piece of paper, start writing out your book ideas. Like, start mind mapping everything that you can think of on the topic that you're going to write about. And then the next day, start turning that into an outline. Then the next day, start like writing your first 100 words, right? And just chip away at it. One little bit at a time, and it's the whole how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. Like there's no other way to do it when it comes to your book. Like you got to stay focused on like just what's right in front of you, tackle that piece, move on to the next thing.
I love it. The way to it is through it. Don't distract yourself, everybody. Once we wrap this up, pull out a piece of paper, do a mind map. You've been thinking about writing a book. Maybe you are writing a book now. Maybe you've written a book and you've got another one coming. Take Chandler's advice to heart and make it real, because you can see what's on the other side. Hundreds of reviews, thousands of customers and clients, tens of thousands of people in your audience. And, you know, that's just in a few short years in your case. And I know you've seen this happen time and time again with authors you've worked with. Chandler, I want to extend a big thank you on behalf of the Bestseller Summit online audience. Very glad that we were able to make this work, and that I could feature you and your wisdom and your expertise on the books and on book writing and marketing to the audience. And love that you got your core values on the wall back there. These are my core values right here.
Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, it's funny. This is mostly for team meetings, because we have team meetings, and so I want this to be like front and center in every meeting that I'm in. But it's just kind of funny when I get on interviews like this.
Yeah, this time I noticed you don't have the cowboy hat, but
no cowboy hat.
That's a great prop, right?
It is.
No, but in all seriousness, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for watching. I hope this was valuable. Take Chandler's advice to heart. Start. Do your mind map. Start writing. That's the way to build momentum and get your book out there and make an impact with it. So we'll see you on a future interview. Hope you're enjoying the summit. Thanks so much. Bye for now.